let's turn it over now to our next speaker, who I've not allowed a chance to finish his lunch, so he'll have to finish later. That's okay. We're so honored to have Elliot Fox. Elliot's Blackfoot name is Wolf Collar. He said he'll pronounce it for you when he gets up here. Elliot is a member of the Kainai, or Blood Tribe. It's a First Nation and one of the four members of the Blackfoot Confederacy. He has worked in the field of natural resource conservation and land management in southwest Alberta, largely within the Crown of the Continent ecosystem for the past 30 years, as a fish, wildlife, forestry, rangeland, and climate adaptation technician with Parks Canada, Waterton Lakes, the Alberta Fish and Wildlife, and the Blood Tribe, the Earthwatch and Resilience Institutes, and is a senior land manager with the Kainai and Piikani First Nations. Elliot is currently working as an independent consultant based out of his residence on the Blood Reserve. More recently, Elliot has been appointed as a member of the Parks Canada National Conservation and Restoration Indigenous Advisory Committee, the Crown Managers Partnership Landscape Conservation Design Committee, and is a board member with the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, Southwestern Alberta chapter. He is currently working on the 5th year as a consultant assistant project manager for the Blackfoot Confederacy Tribal Council's Native Trout Recovery Project. First year as the project manager for the environmental protection and conservation, which was focused on establishment of, and he's in the first year as a project manager for environmental protection and conservation, focused on exploring the establishment of a Blackfoot Confederacy Indigenous protected and conserved area somewhere hopefully in southwest Alberta. He's also an Indigenous conservation consultant with the Mistakis Institute. Elliot is a graduate of the Renewable Resource Management program at Lethbridge College, where he earned a degree in environmental science. So I've had the privilege to hear Elliot speak at other gatherings in the Crown, including up in Lethbridge this last winter on some of the work that he's doing. And I think you'll find it very fascinating and interesting, and the potential for models that are being exported here amongst tribal nations and collaboratives here in the United States, south of Canada. So Elliot, thank you for the work you do on behalf of the Confederacy and all of us, and thank you for being here today to share about that work.
Okay, niks ook wax. Kit connects met simpel just gooi. Stoor na kook makoyoch kinni. You don't do me again. Hello, relatives and friends. I just said in my Blackfoot language, hello. Glad to see everyone today. I said my Blackfoot name. It translates as, well, the way we say it, it's kind of tough. It's makoyoch ginni. So what it translates to is wolf collar, and it was an old name from a healer from the 1800s. He used to wear a wolf pelt around his collar. So I was very fortunate to receive that name. Peter made me sound pretty important. I'm not really that important. So I just, before I get going here, I just want to thank the Glacier-Two Medicine Alliance for inviting me. I feel very honored and privileged and humbled to be here to speak with you. And I've heard about some pretty prominent Western scientists that are here today. So now I'm really nervous. I just want to thank Peter and Ashley for the great job they've done in coordinating this annual event. So really glad to be here to speak to you today. I will just get into it. There's lots of slides, and I think we'll have time for questions later, so I'll just, I guess, take this mic and stand by unless my wife wants to advance the slides for me. That's what wives do, right?
There's a clicker here.
Oh, right here, so I can do it?
That should work just
Okay, cool.
fine.
Okay, she's off the hook. All right, so So what my presentation is going to talk about today is Blackfoot lead, conservation and restoration of native trout and bison in the Crown of the Continent transboundary ecosystem. This is a picture, my wife and I were driving from Pincher Creek. We live near Cardston, Alberta, southern Alberta. And we went through Waterton and we were heading home and the sun was going down and looked in the rear view and she's like, hey, stop, you gotta take a picture of that. So this is that picture. Turned out actually, so iPhones are not bad. Anyway, yeah, so that's what I'll be talking about. So the Blackfoot Confederacy, that's who I'm working on a couple of projects with. They're the Blackfoot Confederacy Tribal Council. So they're a not-for-profit regional managing organization representing the Blackfoot Confederacy nations of Ganow, or the Blood Tribe, Siksika, Piikani. They're on the Canada side. We'll see a map here in a bit. And I'm Scotty Piikani, our brothers and sisters from the Blackfeet Nation. The mission is to collaborate, restore, protect, honor, and enhance the collective culture, language, and self-identity of the Blackfoot people, and to establish political and economic sovereignty over Blackfoot territory, including natural resources, for the benefit of current and future generations of the Blackfoot people and probably everybody else too that lives there. So this is our territory pre-contact. So this is courtesy of Paulette Fox. She did this as part of her master's work at the University of Lethbridge. So she delineated our territory based on early explorers, documents, elders, interviews, and in the archives in Canada and the US. Anyway, so the territory included lands in what are now Alberta, Saskatchewan, Montana, and Wyoming, and was bounded on the west by the Rockies. We actually went further into the Rockies, but we always came back. On the north, by the North Saskatchewan River, on the east by the Great Sand and Cypress Hills into, does this thing have a pointer?
Top button.
Top button, okay. Aha. Yeah, so here's the North Saskatchewan, obviously the Rocky Mountains. That's out into the Sand and Cypress Hills and south to the Yellowstone. So that's kind of where it was generally, but it was, it was a dynamic boundary. It changed. Anyway, so what our group with the Confederacy thought, well, we don't really like dealing with lines on the map. So one of our techs did a heat map. So this is, this is kind of the heat map. Oh boy, there we go. Yeah, so this is the heat map. So there's the continental divide. So that's kind of where we were. And then the yellow, we'd venture out. Anyway, the archaeological record confirms our presence in around the core of the territory dating back 13,000 years. So I'm just gonna go through some examples of Blackfoot-led conservation projects. I'm gonna end with talking about Indigenous Protected and Conserved Areas, IPCAs. That's kind of what Ashley, when I first engaged with her, had said the Glacier-Two Medicine people would like to hear more about it. They don't know a lot, so I'll talk about that. But what you're gonna hear, it's kind of a buzzword these days, especially in Canada. It's gaining momentum in the US. It's called Indigenous-led conservation. So what we're doing, and you'll see some of the projects, is Blackfoot-led. So we're working, we're finishing up year 5 of the Native Trout Recovery Project. I'm just going to mention E&E or bison. That's a Blackfoot word for bison. The Blood Tribe returned plains bison in 2021. Anyway, yeah, and they're wild. We got them from Elk Island. There's 40 animals. And then the Blackfeet, Skapi Piikani, they received some animals from the same herd. boy, probably 8-10 years ago. There was 80 head that Elk Island wanted to give back to the Blackfeet because those were the seed stock. That's where they came from, that formed the Elk Island herd. And they're very pure. I think they're 98 or 99% pure. So that's the herd that's out at the Spirit Hills Ranch. And I think they hang out along the highway between here and Browning, because they've had their bigger herd for many years. So there's two different herds. Anyway, so I'll just talk a bit about that, and then I'll end with the IPCA, just some information on that. Okay, so our native trout recovery project, our initial study area was the Old Man watershed and the Bow, which is kind of in the middle of Blackfoot territory, and mostly in southern Alberta. The headwaters of the St. Mary are in Glacier Park and flow through the Blackfeet. So there's a connection there to Montana and the US. Anyway, that was our study area. There's our current reserve lands. Siksika is just east of Calgary, B. Gunny. Blood Tribe's there just south of Lethbridge, and here's where we're at. Oh no, we're barely off the border, aren't we? I think we're off the reserve. Are we in the park or what?
We're on the reservation.
Oh, okay. So we're on the map. Anyway, yeah. So that's kind of where we're at. And then here's a bigger sort of a slide. There's this is the Bow, and that's the Old Man, and there's the 4 reserves. So the reserve lands overlap the Bow and Old Man watersheds. They're the only watersheds east of the Continental Divide where both bull and West Slope cutthroat trout are native and coexist. And I'm not sure about Montana, so someone here can probably tell me about that, I guess. So some of the challenges facing native trout, in this case bull and West Slope cutthroat, habitat loss resulting from human activities, mining, logging, grazing, in unfenced headwater streams, random camping, off-highway vehicle use, and dewatering, water diversion for irrigation. Southern Alberta is the irrigation capital of Canada, and you can really see, especially doing work in the rivers, we can see how it's really depleting the flows. The streams are getting warmer because there's not as much volume, so it's just sad. So personally, I think they're taking too much water. Nothing against farmers. But yeah, so I think there's got to draw the line somewhere. Interaction of land use with climatic extremes like we've had for thousands of years, floods, droughts, and fire. But as we know, every summer there's smoke everywhere. So global warming, I believe it's real, and it's cumulative with all these different things going on, and we're hearing almost every day there's record temperatures and those kinds of things. So that's an impact to the trout. And then competition and hybridization with introduced non-native species, so rainbow, brook, and brown trout. So rainbow trout can hybridize with cutthroat, and brook trout can hybridize with bull trout, but brown trout can't hybridize with either. I'm not going to go through all this. So over the past 5 years, we've trained 17 Blackfoot technicians from all 4 nations. We work very closely with the Blackfeet Fish and Wildlife staff. We've conducted eDNA water sampling. eDNA is environmental DNA, where we take water samples. Like, I'm kind of an old school tech. We had to shock back in the last century, in the 90s. And so we were, it's pretty intrusive and invasive with fish. But now all we had to do was take 3 1-liter water samples from whatever stream we were looking at to see what kind of trout were in there. So our lab that we work with is the University of Victoria. They can identify bull trout, West Slope cutthroat trout, rainbow trout, and brook trout. Anyway, yeah, those 4. So they could tell us if they're not in the stream, if they are, and which types of trout are in there. And we would just, we filtered the water through a little vacuum pump and a little paper filter, pop it into an envelope and send it to the lab. And they'll send it back and tell us, okay, there's no trout, or there's, so, you know, pretty cool. We don't have to touch fish. They shed scales and that, so it's their DNA that's picked up. We installed 18 water temperature data loggers in the rivers. That's how we're finding out they're really warm. We did a whole bunch of stream habitat assessments and a whole bunch of stream habitat restoration on some really degraded streams. I think we planted, probably over 3,000 willow stakes along some of the stream banks in various streams in southern Alberta. And then we did spawning bed surveys or red surveys. I forgot to put in here, last fall, we were certified to be electrofishing technicians. So the Blackfoot Confederacy purchased a backpack electrofisher. So there's 8 of us that are certified now. And then I did, I interviewed 14 elders over the past 5 years just to find out what the significance of water and fish were to our people. So here's the eDNA stuff. This was our biologist for year 1 to 3, Matt Coombs. This is Carly Greer. She's Parks Canada, Waterton Lake. She came out a few times. Here's some of our techs from Peak Gunny. Alvin First Rider from Ghana, but he's actually a dual citizen. His mother was the late Viney Kennedy, so he's half Blackfeet. And then here they are filtering the samples and look like mad scientists. We'd set up anywhere there's an outlet. Some people would drive by and look and they're like, yeah, we're cooking meth. Anyway, we installed 18 of these, but we retrieved, holy man, probably 20 or more that Alberta had already installed. So we install them with the rebar and activate them with a little phone app. Well, we activate the device in the housing, in that little white housing. And right there, we got to point to these, send them to the government and document everything. Anyway, they'll take water temperatures every hour. So we'll come back next year if they didn't wash out, find them, download the data, and it graphs it, and there's a spreadsheet. So pretty amazing. Here's us planting a bunch of willows. So we got the girls out to pound rebar. There. This is Kanzi Fox. Yeah, so this is one stream. This is actually Dutch Creek. You can see some of the willows we planted. Came back the next year, saw most of them lived, quite a few died. So it's, and then this is our spawning bed surveys. This is bull trout in the fall. So they just clean the gravel, as some of you fish people know. And they're pretty obvious. They're really vulnerable. Low flows in the fall. Here's some of our techs just measuring and documenting. This is Kimmy Hool from the Blackfoot Confederacy. She's actually from the Black tribe, but she's married in Beacunny, so they stole her. But yeah, she's kind of our the director for the environment department with the Blackfoot Confederacy. Here's our electrofishing training. We went to Cranbrook last August. So there's 8 of us. I can't see everybody. We got our new biologist's company. His name is Mike Robinson. He's with Low-Tick out of Cranbrook. So this is his guy, and we were the first crew that he certified. So this is downtown Cranbrook, but there's fish. Yeah, so we got the girls out. Some of them got trained up too. And then we actually went, this is Jeremiah North Pagan and Mike Robinson, our biologist. So this is the Cold Wind Creek on the Canada side. That drains off the west side of Chief Mountain. And Roberts Creek is on the east side, and they converge in Canada to form Boundary Creek. What we found is these cutthroat are some of the most pure cutthroat left, I think in Montana and Alberta. In fact, we just got our DNA analysis from the University of Montana genomics lab, and there's 5 that are really pure, like almost 100%, 5 of the 26 clips we sent, and the rest are about 95%. There's a little bit of rainbow trout genetics in them, but so they're still, very pure. Anyway, that's good. So we just, we saw these are little fry. Then here's some pretty good size cutthroat. And these guys are pretty pure. You can see fin clips, and there's Jeremiah. And then just a couple months ago, we helped Trout Unlimited Canada in Tough Creek. So Jeremiah is here, and TJ is here. They're with the Blackfeet Fish and Wildlife. They came across, and we helped Trout Unlimited shock Tough Creek. But we think the trout in there are really hybridized with rainbows, the cutthroats. But we'll see. We took some, Trout Unlimited took some fin clips, so we'll find out. So in last year, 2023, we shifted our study area from the Bow and the Old Man to the Belly and the St. Mary. And it was to support the Blackfeet in reintroducing their bison around Chief Mountain. They're really important streams. So this is a Belly River. There's transboundary bull trout in there. There's the US border. This is Waterton. We've got some blood reserve land, some forest land surrounded by Waterton. Here's Glacier, Waterton Park. Here's the Blackfeet Reserve. This is Alberta. And here's Lee Creek. That's got transboundary bull trout. And then here's Coldwind Creek and Roberts Creek. Chief Mountain's right around here. Here's the highway. And those are those really pure cutthroat. And then, of course, there's the bull trout in the St. Mary that migrate from Montana. And John Weaver was saying they pit tagged bull trout over 10 years ago. And they found the ones they tagged overwintered near the mouth of Lee Creek in Canada from Montana. So they're transboundary, and they're pretty important. They're listed on the, in Canada we call it SARA, the Species at Risk Act. In the US there's the Endangered Species Act. So bull trout are listed on both, and I think cutthroat, I think it's a little bit different in Montana, but they're both threatened, I believe. So there's still there, but they're barely hanging on. So, and this is all kind of taking place in the south part of our study area in the Crown of the Continent ecosystem. So I think some of you are familiar with that. There it is there. And here's a zoomed in map. So yeah, BC, Alberta, Montana, and we are right here, I think. So some people have called it the water tower of North America. I think there's Triple Divide Peak, and I think it's one of the only places on the continent that water drains southeast to the Gulf of Mexico into the Missouri system and the Mississippi, northeast in the Old Man and the Saskatchewan to Hudson Bay, and west into the Columbia, into the Pacific Ocean. So it's we're pretty lucky to have the clean water that we do here. Very lucky. Yeah, anyway, so very fortunate. And then here's, it's a real, lots of jurisdictions. There's 14 different jurisdictions that help manage the Crown. I'm part of the Crown Managers Steering Committee. So there's a group of us that just try to, it's not really a formal group. We just talk and, okay, what are you guys doing? How can we collaborate? We all just want to protect what's left that's wild in this place. And I saw my good friend Anne, who I think is still here, Anne Carlson. There she is. Yeah, so there's a group of us, and we're trying to continue to save this place. That's all part of the bigger Crown of the Continent conservation region. So this is the Crown, and here's the Yellowstone to Yukon. So we're within that region. Here's a map I got. I thought it was quite interesting. It shows one of they call them the consultation people with the blood tribe, and they have them here. John Murray's does that role here, and there's 3 other with the other nations in Canada that do the same, consult with the governments about our traditional sites. So Mike Oka, who's with the blood tribe, gave me this slide, and it shows where they can access traditional sites now. So this is 1910. We could go almost anywhere in Alberta if we had sites. Okay, so here we go. Whoops, didn't want to do that. All right, oh yeah, so there's 1910, 20, 30, not bad, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 2000. So that's what's going on. And our people, or the consultation people, aren't allowed into the white areas, like it's private land, or they don't let them go in to look at, I guess, historical and traditional sites. But it just shows you the impact of development in Alberta anyway. I don't think it's quite as bad in Montana, but I know it's starting to move that way in the Flathead Valley and elsewhere. I'm going to talk about bison or Eni. So Blackfoot people believe everything is connected and has a spirit, and that the Rockies were created from water as the backbone of the world. Water from the Alberta and I guess Montana East Slopes was central to the link between culture and biodiversity, with flowing water and riparian areas providing life to people and bison alike. What time is it? Waiting for that cane to... Is it 2? Okay, good. Yeah, so here's some slides courtesy of the Nature Conservancy Canada. So what it shows is, here's the green part is the bison range in North America. This is circa 1867. The red is the plains, the Great Plains, and that's where the bison were. So we fast forward to present. Here's the same Great Plains. So here's all the herds that are left. So the red dots are on the Great Plains, and they're kind of spread out. And the black dots are bison herds outside of the Great Plains. So the yellow are places left with the full complement of wildlife and other species in the Yellowstone to Yukon boundary. So that's Grand Teton, Yellowstone, and Banff. And the orange is the only place left with the full complement of wildlife species in the Rockies and out onto the Great Plains. And that's around Chief Mountain, where the Blackfeet, we're working with them to bring those bison back. When they do get up there, they're going to be susceptible to predation, which a lot of these other herds aren't. So, they're going to be wild. So it's the only place on the continent where that's going to happen. Well, I guess Yellowstone a bit. Anyway, so, but this is the Rockies and the Plains. I don't think Yellowstone's really on the Plains. Anyway, and this is southern Canada. So I think a lot of the Americans think that Canada is this vast country, lots of space. Yeah, it is, but we have 35 million people in Canada, or 36, and they're largely concentrated in the southern part of the country, from Vancouver into Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario. They're all the metropolitan areas are close to the U.S. border. So really, and then this is all, pretty vast and open. Most of our population would fit into North Dakota and Montana. So that's how we're, that's how the dynamics of the Canadian population is. Anyway, so here's the original extent of the Great Plains in Canada, again with the full complement of those species. This is 2013, the remaining grassland areas. And then here's the remaining intact grassland areas with the full complement of species, and it's right here, the north part of the Blackfeet Reservation, Glacier National Park, up to Banff. So they've been squeezed into that little area. And then this is just a slide. It's just the arable land is Canada and the richness of species at risk. So the red is on this side here is the richness, so it's very high. And this is the intact grassland, yellow, and cropland, red. So those same areas that are highly populated are the most rich areas for species at risk. So they're disappearing, as some of us know. Anyway, what did I do? Okay, so maybe some more positive news. So this is the herd I talked about. This is on the blood reserve. This is actually just southwest of Lethbridge. There's a highway that cuts through the blood reserve. It's probably 10 minutes southwest of Lethbridge, on the south side of the Oldman River. So this is their pasture. We got 40 head from Elk Island. They're now at close to 60, and they've had calves, which is good. So they're being buffalo. Yeah, and this is one of our last intact prairie areas on our reserve. We call them reserves in Canada. They're reservations here. About 75, close to 80% of the blood reserve is cultivated. So this is on one of the last tracks of, this is actually mixed grass prairie. So it's beyond the fescue. And then this is the Chief Mountain reintroduction last year. So last June, a small herd of 49 bison were released back into a homeland, the Blackfeet Reservation, that had not seen them in over 140 years. Tribal leaders released the bison onto a large, approximately 25,000 acre tract of Blackfeet land in the Chief Mountain area. I didn't take that picture. I was there before they released them to help with some ceremonies and sweat lodges they had. There's Chief Mountain. So that was an experiment from what I understand. So the fence wasn't quite done, the perimeter, and one of them got into Canada, a cow. So Parks Canada and Alberta Fish and Wildlife stepped up, got a couple of choppers, found the cow, netted her, and sedated her and brought her back to Chief Mountain. So last fall, I believe, the Blackfeet moved him back to the Spirit Hills Ranch. And we work very closely with the Blackfeet. When the fence is done, hopefully by next year, they're gonna try again. So I was up to Chief Mountain a couple of weeks ago, and the fence is going up. So it'll be good to, and I drove through there before I knew about this last year, and I was like, where's all the cows? And then I spent the day with Jeremiah and Ryan, Running Wolf. He's one of the guardians with the Blackfeet. It's like, where's the cows? I usually almost bump them, or I gotta wait for them on the highway. It's like, they're gone. I'm like, what? So the Blackfeet worked with the Nature Conservancy to buy out those grazing leases for, I think, 6 years. So it's good to not see cows, nothing against cows. I still eat a little bit of beef, but I'm trying to eat more bison. Anyway, yeah, so it'll be good to see them back up there. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this project I'm working on this year, and it might be longer, we'll see. So we're exploring the establishment of an Indigenous protected and conserved area in the Alberta East Slopes. So the Alberta East Slopes are here. This is Jasper, Banff. This is all public land, but it's forest reserve. So it's mostly protected areas from Waterton to the Castle. This is the Crow's Nest Pass. This is not a protected area. So we're trying to find some land if we're in the consultation phase now. So we're asking the 4 Blackfoot communities, what do you guys think? Do you think we should try to establish one of these or not? And I've had, it's been slow. I've had one consultation meeting with Siksika with 10 of their elders. And at the end, it was unanimous. They said, we got to do this, And I said, well, do you want to do it? Do you think we should do it individually as nations or collectively? And they're like, no, together, collectively, we have a bigger voice in it and we can do more. So we'll see. It's not definite yet, so we're exploring it. So somewhere here, maybe. So we're going to talk to the federal government about some of the national parks, maybe Waterton, Banff, I don't know. There's a lot of provincial public land that was actually federal land that we entered into treaty with Canada in 1877. So they were obligated to the Blackfoot people in Canada for us to still have uses on and rights to those lands. But they transferred those, federal government transferred provincial or federal crown lands to the provinces in 1930 with no consultation with the tribes. So actually the treaty was 1877. Waterton became a park in 1895. Alberta became a province in 1905. They transferred the resources, the natural resources, in 1930 without talking to us. So, we'll see what they say. If we don't have any success, we're gonna have to buy land. And, it's not cheap these days. So we may have to talk to NGOs and foundations to see if they'd be interested in helping us. And so we're on the Canada side. Our land is, our forested land in Waterton is probably 2 miles from the US border on the Chief Mountain Highway. So we're, less than 5 miles from Chief Mountain and those Blackfeet bison. So Waterton and Glacier have told the Blackfoot Confederacy, if your bison walk into Glacier or Waterton, we're okay with that. And the hope is if they come onto our land, we're okay with that. But in Alberta, they are still considered domestic livestock. So there's a push to try to get them, their status changed to wildlife. So if they walk out of the park or wherever, and a lot of these ranchers and hunters, our neighbors, they're like, if they come out, we're killing them. Like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Anyway, so that's kind of what we're up against, we're working for. Whoops, sorry, went backwards. Where are we here? All right. Okay, this is pretty wordy. This is the boring part. There's not a whole bunch of pictures. So what is an IPCA? So there's, we're going to go to this website when I'm done here, and they talk about it better than me. So it's called the Indigenous Leadership Initiative, ILI. They've got a website. You just Google Indigenous Leadership Initiative and you'll find their website. They've been very instrumental in Canada, working with the federal government to secure funding to support Indigenous-led conservation projects across the country. They helped secure $300 million with the Canadian government to try to reach 30% of land by 2030. That kind of 30 by 2030 to try to reach that target. Anyway, they kind of so IPCA is real quick here. The real trailblazers with IPCAs were the Australians, the Aboriginal Australians. They're doing some amazing things down there. And then it kind of, the New Zealand, the Maoris are doing the same. Now Canada's pretty big, and it's gaining momentum around the world. Anyway, so IPCAs are places that Indigenous nations identify for conservation. Those lands help sustain our communities and the health of the world. There's growing recognition of the significant role IPCAs can play in biodiversity conservation and the protection of culture and heritage. There is no blueprint or process to follow to establish an IPCA. They are self-determined by each Indigenous nation, and while they need to be recognized and respected by federal, provincial, and territorial, and I guess state, if that happens, They must be designed and governed with each nation's territory, goals, and governance structures. Thus, they may look different and use different legislative or policy tools. So there's a group in Canada, they're called the Indigenous Circle of Experts. They're Indigenous elders and knowledge holders from across the country. They place Indigenous peoples in the leadership role when it comes to managing, protecting, and making decisions concerning their territories. ICE, as they're called. They also define IPCAs as lands and waters where Indigenous governments have the primary role in protecting and conserving ecosystems through Indigenous laws, governance, and knowledge systems. While they can take a variety of forms, IPCAs are based on the priorities of each nation. ICE reported, ICE reported and explained that IPCAs share the following essential elements. They are Indigenous-led, that's where you hear the buzzword. They represent a long-term commitment to conservation. They elevate Indigenous rights, and they're a practical expression of the rights set out under the UN, we call it UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, including free, prior, and informed consent. In 2018, ICE also reported that IPCAs were critical to achieving international conservation targets. Recently, the Conference of the Parties, COP15, set new targets highlighting the need for Indigenous leadership. To reach new targets, it will be integral that Indigenous nations are engaged and leading the establishment and management of new protected and conserved areas. The UN Global Assessment Report on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services offered a dire account of the state of nature, but it said that lands and waters managed by Indigenous peoples tend to be healthier and more vibrant. A University of BC study found that the number of birds, mammals, amphibians, and reptiles in Canada and elsewhere were highest on lands managed by Indigenous communities. An IPCA in the Alberta East Slopes would ensure clean water, habitat, and conserve wildlife, including terrestrial and aquatic species at risk, grizzlies, native trout, to sustain the biodiversity of the traditional territory of the Blackfoot in this landscape. Undertaking watershed-scale planning as part of an IPCA will engage Blackfoot people, strengthen their relationships to their lands, elevate their rights, give them voice, and add to employment opportunities in meaningful long-term ways. To start, dedicated time is required to gather and discuss with community members and elders. There's also a need to engage with government and non-government agencies and other Indigenous communities who have successfully established IPCAs to learn from. Sorry if I put you to sleep. Anyway, that's kind of what they are. So this is what we're doing, the Blackfoot Confederacy Tribal Council. We're exploring the development on our territory in Alberta. We're strengthening our relationship to our lands and waters. Informing local, if it happens, it'll inform local and regional land use policies and prioritize site-specific protection, conservation, and restoration actions based on these objectives. And it'll elevate traditional rights and the role in land use management. So here's a map. I pulled this off the Target One Challenge website. If you Google Target One Challenge Canada, the website will come up. Here's all the Indigenous-led projects that have been funded in Canada. So here's the US border. They're all over the place. Here's Alberta. There's a void in Saskatchewan and southern Alberta. So we're trying to fill a little bit of that void. Yeah, and then, obviously we're close to Montana. So that's kind of, where that's at. And I always like to show this slide. Some of you have heard about Pluie the wolf, but thinking on the scale that nature needs the travels of Pluie the wolf. In June 91, or from June 91 to December 93, Pluie traveled over 100,000 square kilometers, an area 15 times larger than Banff, excuse me, or 10 times larger than Yellowstone. In her travels, she crossed more than 30 different political jurisdictions, including 3 states, 2 provinces, private lands, and First Nations territories. Pluie was shot and killed in a legal hunt south of Kootenay National Park in December 95, so right there. So she was collared in the Kananaskis. She went out onto the prairie, down into Montana, Idaho, Washington, BC, and she got shot there. So the point being, we need to maintain these wild spaces and places because there are still those keystone species that need large landscapes. So that is, I guess, my message for today. Like I said, I'm gonna go to the website and I'm gonna show you a few pictures. One story I'll share with you. What time is it? 2:29. Okay, 8 minutes. All right, I'll do this quick, or maybe I won't. Anyway, so the Indigenous leadership, the leadership group, because we had engaged with them, with the Blackfoot Confederacy, they told us we're having a meeting in Lummi, Washington, this past May. You guys should come. So we went, me and Kimmy, my supervisor. So the Lummi Nation hosted it. Was really cool. If I don't have time, because I'm going to run out, but I'll show you the website real quick. So they had a canoe ceremony. There was BC Indigenous people that and the Lummi and other Washington Indigenous communities. They had a canoe ceremony. They met. They cooked us a bunch of salmon. And the objective of the meeting was to discuss with some of the Indigenous communities present, which were from Alaska, Washington, California, Hawaii, and on the mainland, I think there was, Kansas. There was probably 50 people there. And the question was, so do you think the U.S. should establish a guardian network? Because the Indigenous leadership people that were there have established a huge network in Canada. So we got the report or a summary back after we attended, and they said, yeah, they want to do it. So it's going to start happening in the U.S. I think Mexico's interested. So it was a good meeting in Lummi. I saw my brothers from the Blackfeet there. Tyson Running Wolf and Daryl Hall were there. And yeah, it was really good to meet some of those other people. So I'll go to the website now. I'll try to leave time for questions. If I don't have time, just reach me at this email. Okay, so I'll end there, I guess, for now. All right. Anyway, yeah, so this is the website, Indigenous Leadership Initiative. So this is the IPCA stuff. So it just talks about there are places that Indigenous people identify for conservation. And I pulled some of the stuff I talked about off the website. 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity is on lands cared for and loved by Indigenous peoples. Anyway, you can check this out. I'll just go to the new, here we go, U.S. Tribal Stewardship. So this is starting to gain momentum. This is the Lummi meeting. So here's the canoe ceremony before the meeting started. So the movement of Indigenous stewardship is growing in the U.S., where many tribal nations are launching guardians programs and asserting sovereignty over lands and waters. Actually, what the Blackfeet are doing around Chief Mountain by clearing that land, That's really an IPCA. And they've got guardians, but I think they're calling them shield keepers. We'll see them in here. So they're doing it. It's just not called an IPCA. And, it would be great if that could grow. And I see one of my colleagues I met on a Zoom call here a while ago. Wes Sarmento, I believe, is here. Wes is going to be doing some really cool research in there. We're going to try to give him a hand. He's going to be looking at cattle and bison and the impacts of cattle on that landscape now that they're gone, and a whole bunch of other cool things. So he's doing that as part of, I think, his grad thesis, Wes? Yeah. Anyway, so that's going to be really interesting. Yeah, so this is, I think, obviously out on the plains. Okay, this is a seat at the table. This is the Blackfeet Shield Keepers. And then I'll quickly show the Lummi meeting. There was a lot of ceremony there. It was really cool to see some of the coast indigenous people. It was almost like a potlatch. This is Miles Richardson, he's Haida. Man, that guy has done a lot of work with the Haida. This is Jerome, he's from Hawaii. I can't remember, this lady's from Alaska. This guy is from Kansas, I think. Anyway, yeah, and here's our big group. So you can see, here's Daryl Hall. There's Tyson. I like to give him a hard time. You got to give that guy a hard time. There's me way in the back. And here is Kimmy. But yeah, so you can see some of the people that were there. Boy, those Hawaiian guys are huge. This is Billy. He's from Hawaii. This is Jerome. And this is their gal they brought. She's actually a lawyer and they're indigenous. But really cool to meet all these people. And we'll quickly go back to the Blackfeet, if I can figure this out. I'm a Mac guy, so I haven't used Windows for a long time. Oh yeah, here we go. Okay, so this is a story. They sent a filmmaker out. This is below Chief Mountain. So there's some of the guys, Daryl, Tyson, and others. Oh, John Murray's there. So you can read this. I don't have time to go through this. So anyway, I think that's all I've got for now. I'm looking for the white cane. All right, well, yeah, that's all I've got for today. Thank you.
Questions for Elliot? Yeah, you got it.
Hi.
Elliot, what do the guardians do? I mean, are they on the ground people enforcing grazing, or what are they?
That's a really good question. I totally forgot to talk about that. Thanks for reminding me. Yeah, so basically they can be likened to park rangers or conservation officers. So they would have enforcement authority on that land. So like with the Blackfeet, Ryan used to be a cop, Running Wolf. He's one of their guardians, I believe, but they're called shield keepers, I think. So I think, I'm not sure if Ryan's got that enforcement authority on that part of the reservation still. I know Daryl's part of that. I think there's a couple others. Ryan, his mom's from our community, or his dad's from our community. Red Crow, but he's got a different Running Crane. Yeah. And and Tyson is really involved in that. So they're kind of there just to watch out for it and teach and make sure no one's doing what they shouldn't be. So I don't know if that answers your question. Thank you. The lady in the blue coat.
What are some of the bigger challenges to the success of the Bison Project?
Keeping them in their area. Yeah, and the bison herd you've seen on the Blood Reserve, That fence, it's not a big page wire fence. The highest, it's a 4-strand fence. The top is 54 inches high. So no bison can get his nose over a 54-inch wire. They can get their nose over, they're gonna jump. And so I think there's one electrified wire. It's high tensile wire. The bottom wire is 18 inches high, so critters can crawl through, antelope can crawl under. And yeah, so it's once they know their area, they respect it. In fact, the guy who used to watch our bison herd, he said a car, because it's right by the highway, a car hit the ditch and it took out like 8 posts. And he got a call and he's like, oh my goodness. And he thought they were gonna be out, the herd. But that high tensile wire stayed really tight and they stayed in the pasture, and all he had to do was pound some new posts, so it was fine. But I saw the fence up at Chief Mountain. It's a little different because those are a different herd. They got a bigger place. They're gonna be wild. They're gonna be chased by big furry creatures with big teeth. So that's, I think, part of the challenge. So, you know, if the surrounding neighbors and the community can help, that'll certainly help. Yeah, but that's gonna be a tough task. That's one of the biggest challenges. What else did you ask? Sorry.
Yeah, just what challenges that they're facing.
Yeah, and in Canada, again, it's the legislation. You know, they're domestic livestock. And then the ranchers and are concerned about disease, brucellosis, tuberculosis, but I don't think there's any cases of a bison infecting a cow with those diseases. There's a lot of fear. I think those are mainly, and to get an IPCA is land. If you can get it from the government, that's good. If you can't, then you gotta buy it. So it's gonna be expensive. I think those, from what I can think, is those are the main challenges. Anne.
That is amazing. Thank you, Elliot. I swear you're triplets. I don't know how you get so much done with all the work you're involved in, but really appreciate hearing.
It's the wife. It's all her.
I was wondering, so sort of following up on that question, so the idea of like if there's an opportunity to come to this agreement with the government around creating an IPCA, or you said if you can't, then needing to raise money to buy land. But if the government wrote the treaties and transferred them without consultation, then isn't there another option where they should pay you for essentially to make it right, and the damages of taking away so much land without having consultation, and there would be an opportunity to have funding come from the government?
Good question. Yeah, there's a lot of land claims. We've got a huge land claim for our original reserve. So that's been recommended by the Supreme Court of Canada to the Government of Canada, telling them you need to settle this or you're gonna lose if it comes to the Supreme Court. So we're waiting on that. Will we get land back? I kind of doubt it, unless the government gives us crown land. But you know, if it's money compensation, it'll be a lot of money. We're thinking over $1 billion maybe, because it was a huge tract. In fact, the east side of Waterton Park, from the lakes and the river, that was all supposed to be part of the blood reserve, all the way east to the St. Mary and north to the Old Man at Lethbridge. So we can buy land, I guess, if we get that compensation. But there's a lot of other social and health and economic issues that are probably a bigger priority. So we got to wrestle probably with our leadership. And then, you know, if that's the case, we're going to reach out to some NGOs to see if they have funding or they can raise funding to help us purchase land. We're working really close with the Nature Conservancy Canada on the Canada side, they've secured almost 40,000 acres around on the east side of Waterton Park. It's under conservation easements. So that land will never be developed, or a lot of it won't. You can find their map online. We're working close with them, and then the Blackfeet are really working close with TNC. So I know Dylan DeRosier, he's not here today. He's working really close with the Blackfeet. So we're collaborating and we're trying to get this thing figured out. But Glacier and Waterton, they've been really supportive, which is really great. So they're a big help. Yeah, so I guess on that, I guess reconciling the, the land we were supposed to get. Be nice if they gave it back, but there's a lot of people there that aren't Blackfoot, right? So what's going to happen there? So that's where we gotta try to figure things out. So that's a really good question. Hopefully we can try to move forward and achieve something. Okay, thank you.